I'm next in the broadcast as officials work out the charges against the agitator that attacked the U.S. ambassador to Korea. Experts say the Seoul-Washington alliance remains intact. With the finance minister's call this week for a minimum wage hike to boost the economy, the debate begins on whether to raise worker salaries. A massive snowstorms on the east coast of the United States has some 94 million people affected by some of the lowest temperatures in 20 years. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News live from Seoul. I am Kang Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the legal aftermath of Thursday's attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert.
Prosecutors are seeking an arrest warrant for the man who slashed the envoy with a knife. Kim reports on how the assailant will likely face several charges, including attempted murder.
Prosecutors are seeking an arrest warrant to charge a man who carried out a bloody knife attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert with attempted murder, business obstruction, and violence against the foreign envoy. The prosecution said the attack was intentional, considering that the 55-year-old was equipped with the 10-inch knife he used in the incident. He had reportedly been planning the attack for 10 days. A special investigative team will look into the motives behind the assault and whether the attacker was working with an accomplice. It's focusing on Kim's pro-North Korea activities and could charge him with violating the national security law that bars sympathizing with North Korea if enough evidence is found. Kim traveled to North Korea 7 times from 1999 to 2007. He also attempted to set up a memorial in Seoul to the late North Korean leader Kim Jong-il upon his death in 2011. Another possible motive for the attack, as he was being arrested, Kim voiced his opposition to ongoing military exercises between Korea and the U.S. and demanded they come to a halt. The attack on the U.S. ambassador was the first of its kind in Korea. High-level officials from the government, ruling party, and the presidential office of Cheongwade have agreed to share information with Washington in line with their bilateral ties. Lippert is at a local hospital recovering from surgery he received after the attack to repair his face and hand injuries, and doctors say he can be discharged as early as next week. Kim, Arirang News.
The alarming knife attack on U.S. Ambassador Lippert yesterday shook the country and also sparked concerns about whether it will affect Seoul's relations with Washington. But the general view by analysts that we spoke to is that the U.S.-Korea alliance will remain intact. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
South Korea and the United States have enjoyed an alliance that gets stronger by the day. And then this happened, a brutal knife attack on the U.S. ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert by a South Korean man at an event in central Seoul. But experts are not worried about the incident affecting the alliance.
But if you think about it, the national interests do not change.
That national interest stretches from trade, tourism to military cooperation, with a focus on countering North Korean threats. The suspect in Thursday's attack shouted his opposition to the joint South Korea-U.S. military drills. But the South Korea-U.S. Combined Forces Command stands firm by its plan to conduct the drills, scheduled to continue through late April. North Korea's hasty response to the attack, calling it a deserved punishment, and the knife of justice for the joint exercises, may also bolster Seoul and Washington's commitment in dealing with Pyongyang's human rights abuses and nuclear program.
This will push them even further to support more punitive actions and aggressive actions.
Most analysts say the pillars of the alliance are too strong to be shaken by an unpredictable lone wolf attack by a crazed individual. But some do point out that while the relationship at the government level will remain intact, the incident could take a toll on U.S. public sentiment about security in South Korea. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's defense chief says he will continue to check in on the ongoing joint military drills with the United States to show that the bilateral alliance stands strong. Defense Minister Han Min-gu visited an annual Key Resolve military exercise venue at a U.S. air base on Friday. There, he spoke to troops and expressed sympathy for Ambassador Lippert, condemning this attack as a form of terror. Commander of the U.S. Forces Korea, General Curtis Scaparotti, also present, meanwhile says that the unfortunate attack does not represent the sentiment of the South Korean people.
Turning to the president's Middle East diplomacy tour, President Park Geun-hye spent her final day in Abu Dhabi meeting with Korean troops. And it's the first time Korea's top commander has visited a military vessel deployed overseas. Chery files this report from the UAE.
Wearing a khaki-colored navy jumper, President Park Geun-hye spent her final day in the UAE visiting Korean military personnel dispatched to the region. The Cheonghae Anti-Piracy Unit has been patrolling the Gulf of Aden since 2009, while the Abu Dhabi-based ARC military unit has been providing UAE troops anti-terrorism and other types of training for the past 4 years. From a senior chief petty officer who participated in Korea's successful rescue mission against Somali pirates in 2011 to an officer dispatched to the region for the 4th time, the president praised the troops for their hard work and making Korea proud.
사랑하는 가족과 또 고향을 떠나서 높은 파도와 또 이 뜨거운 태양을 이겨내면서 나라와 국민을 위해 땀과 열정을 바치고 있는데 그런 여러분의 노고에 진심으로 큰 박수를 보냅니다.
President Park also met some 30 Korean medical personnel dispatched to 4 hospitals in the UAE as part of bilateral collaboration in the field. While highlighting Korea's internationally recognized medical and healthcare system, the president listened to their views on how the Korean medical community can gain successful footing overseas. President Park now heads to Qatar, the final destination on her Middle East tour. There she plans to seek support for Korean participation in Doha's infrastructure preparations for the 2022 Qatar World Cup. 최유선, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
And on a related note, Korea will begin drilling for oil in the United Arab Emirates in collaboration with a consortium that includes GS Energy. The Korean National Oil Corporation said Friday it will aim to extract up to 5,000 barrels of crude oil per day starting in 2017, eventually expanding that to 40,000 by 2019. The state-run oil company formed the consortium with GS Energy 3 years ago to develop 3 oil fields in partnership with the UAE state-owned Abu Dhabi National Oil Company.
A hike in the minimum wage here in Korea has been a hot topic of discussion since Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan recently highlighted the need for one. But it's also fueled concerns that too big of a jump here could end up putting small and mid-sized firms out of business. Our Kwon So-ah tells us more.
5,200 Korean won, or a little more than $5 an hour, is the current minimum wage in Korea. The amount has risen steadily over the years, but many say it should be climbing faster. With around 3 months remaining for the government to decide on a minimum wage hike ahead of a yearly wage review, it's become a hot potato in the political arena. It was on the table at 2 meetings on Friday, one between senior officials from the presidential office, the government, and the ruling Saenuri Party, and another held by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. The parties at both meetings seemed to see eye to eye on remarks by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan earlier this week when he talked about the possibility of deflation if things stay the way they are.
Unless we raise the minimum wage, we have no chance of reviving the economy. It has come to the point that we plan to provide tax deductions for companies that raise salaries higher than their past 3-year averages.
Adding to this, a report out Friday says raising the minimum wage will lead to an increase in the labor share or the ratio of wages to GDP and eventually lead to an increase in employment. But there are also opposing voices from employers and business associations, as there are concerns that a hike to $6 or $7 an hour could cause big problems for the nation's small firms. In line with this, the Korea Employers Federation has recommended that companies refrain from raising hourly pay by more than 1.6%. 권소아, Arirang News.
Now wrapping up our three-part series on China's slowing economy and its impact on Korea. Today we're going to take a look at how some Korean exporters are actually managing to perform better than ever in the Chinese market despite the slowdown. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
Korea's #1 rice cooker manufacturer, Korea Electronics, says its leading foreign customers are Chinese. The company's overall sales in China has grown 60% annually since 2013. Such demand even spurred Korea to go public on Korea's main bourse last year.
Our premium strategy on Chinese consumers has worked out well. Our cooker caters to Chinese food and cooking culture, which has helped to bolster sales.
Korea Electronics isn't alone. Korean-made consumer goods ranging from home appliances to beauty and fashion items are seeking to expand its presence in the Chinese market, a market that's rapidly growing in tandem with consumer demand. Despite growing success in the Chinese market, the total demand for consumer goods stands at a mere 4%, but for intermediate goods, it's well over 68%. It's a significant gap, but experts are hopeful that the Korean wave and improved income and living standards in China will help stoke local spending.
The Chinese government has been fostering consumption driven by economic development. This means its slowing growth rate won't significantly hurt Korean exporters.
Experts say Korean companies should invest more in marketing and branding their goods so they can keep up with the competition coming out of countries like Japan and France. And with the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement set to take effect next year, Korean exporters will have even more opportunities to make their mark, just like Korea Electronics. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, you might call it a fountain of youth to revive the company. The average age of Samsung Group employees has dropped significantly to where 80% of its workers are in their 20s and 30s. Hwang Jae has a story on how this may all be part of the leadership transition to Samsung's heir apparent.
The average age of Samsung Group's employees is dropping. The group says that 80% of its workers are in their 20s and 30s, while more than half of them were born in 1980 or later. Korea's top conglomerate expects the average age to drop even further as new recruits will start working by the end of the month. Looking at one of the group's affiliates, it's even easier to see how hard the conglomerate is trying to give itself new life. The average age of the group's biotech arm, Samsung Bioepis, is a little over 30, which is even lower than that of NCSoft, a high-profile Korean game company that began as a promising startup. Samsung Group's efforts to transform itself into a company that's fresh and innovative comes after Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Gun-hee was hospitalized following a heart attack last May. Pundits say his son Tae-yong, poised to inherit leadership of the group, is at the center of the change. And it's not just the average age of employees that the Crown Prince is trying to give a twist. The group's communication methods are also changing to cater to the younger generation through the use of online and mobile content. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Arirang TV has signed a content and production exchange deal with Spain's public network RTVE. Under the agreement, the two stations will exchange programs and news in case of a major breaking event or current affairs. The two-way content will be provided free of charge. One of the first projects is a jointly produced documentary on smart ICT convergence with Arirang Filming in Spain and RTVE in Korea. That documentary will be aired on both channels later this year. RTVE is Spain's largest broadcasting operator with a dozen national TV and radio channels and one international TV channel.
A massive snowstorm is continuing to batter parts of the eastern United States, forcing thousands of flights to be canceled.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, this latest cold snap is wreaking havoc across state lines. What sort of conditions are we looking at?
Well, we're receiving heavy snow, sub-zero temperatures, and piercing winds, all together wreaking havoc to transportation systems. It's also posing a considerable danger to passengers, whether it be via land or air. One major case in particular is a Delta Airlines flight that skidded off a New York runway, stopping just short of plunging into freezing waters. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
Delta Flight 1068 from Atlanta to New York's LaGuardia Airport skidded and veered off the runway as the plane was trying to land amid a snowstorm at about 11 a.m. Thursday local time. The plane went up an embankment and plowed through a fence, the only thing keeping from hitting the icy waters of Flushing Bay.
The aircraft was carrying 127 passengers and 5 crew members. Happily, there are only minor injuries that have been reported.
Everyone on board the domestic flight was safely evacuated, and at least 2 of the 24 people injured were taken to a local hospital.
It wasn't really that bad, but it was pretty scary, and I'm just thankful that we didn't go into the water.
The airport was shut down temporarily following the accident. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has begun investigating the cause of the accident. This accident happened amid a fierce snowstorm that affected New England through northeastern Texas. The monster snowstorm paralyzed the region, affecting some 94 million people, with more than 4,500 flights canceled on Thursday. Schools were closed, as were government offices and transportation services in some states. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And just to follow up on that story, the U.S. National Weather Service has issued winter storm warnings from the mid-Atlantic states to even southern New England and the lower Mississippi Valley. Officials say a polar vortex is sending freezing Arctic air to 2/3 of the eastern U.S., pushing temperatures to their lowest in 20 years. In Washington, the record-breaking conditions managed to close federal offices and shut down Congress. And staying in the U.S., one of Hollywood's most famous actors, Harrison Ford, was injured in a plane crash in California. Authorities said the incident occurred Thursday afternoon as Ford was flying a World War II vintage plane. Shortly after taking off from Santa Monica Airport, Harrison Ford reported to air traffic control of a complete engine failure. He was then forced to make an emergency landing on an active golf course, after which the 72-year-old was able to walk away from. A full investigation is underway to determine the cause of the accident.
Our process is kind of a slow process, and I'm sure that there's going to be some questions about what caused this and what's that and if we've solved it. At this point in time, it is the very beginning of an investigation. It takes us a long time because we want to get it right.
A statement released by Ford's publicist said he was still receiving treatment in hospital, but reassured that his injuries were not life-threatening. Doctors expect him to make a full recovery. And shifting over to Europe, details of a crucial meeting to discuss the future of Iran's nuclear program are emerging from Switzerland. Delegations from Iran and the P5+1 countries, namely the U.S., China, Russia, France, Britain, plus Germany, gathered in the Swiss town of Montreux on Thursday. Wang Chun, a director from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, said there is some progress on reaching a final deal, but stressed there were still unresolved issues.
Chinese leaders attach great importance to the Iranian nuclear issue. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has presented himself at every negotiation stage. China will make great efforts and contribute to the negotiations as always. It's normal that differences exist during these talks. The important thing is that both the United States and Iran have showed a strong political will.
Although Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif did not attend Thursday's talks, he did express optimism about a final deal possibly later in June. The next round of high-level nuclear talks is scheduled for March 15th. And finally, the European Central Bank is poised to start its stimulus program on Monday. It's estimated to be worth over $1 trillion for the Eurozone economy. Speaking in Cyprus on Thursday, ECB President Mario Draghi announced a so-called quantitative easing policy will purchase 60 billion euros per month of government and corporate bonds through September of next year. The central bank also upgraded its growth outlook by half a percentage point to 1.5% this year.
The ECB's action is going to go the full 18 months that they laid out, and is probably likely to continue after that, because the situation is this huge amount of slack in the economy exists, and it's going to take a while for both the policy action and the market movements we've already seen to use that up.
In response, European and U.S. bonds closed higher in Thursday's trading. The euro fell to 11.5-year low against the greenback before selling slightly higher above $1.10. Meanwhile, Germany's main stock market hit a new all-time high of over 11,500 points. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here next week.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Pitcher Yoon Suk-min has rejoined the Kia Tigers after folding his bid to play in Major League Baseball. It's not all bad news, however, as he returns to Korea with a hefty deal. The 28-year-old and Kia agreed to a 4-year, nearly $8.2 million contract, the largest ever doled out to a free agent in Korean baseball history. Kia made the pursuit for the former KBO MVP after the Baltimore Orioles didn't invite him to spring training camp last month. Baltimore released Yoon from their contract, allowing him to re-sign with his former club. He'll be with Kia as the KBO's spring training games kick off this weekend. Moving on to tennis, the 2015 Davis Cup is underway, and South Korea got off to a commanding start with 2 wins on day 1. Facing Thailand in the first round of Group 1, Im Young-gyu led off with the 6-2, 6-1, 7-6 win over the Nai Udom-chok. Jung Hyun followed up, defeating Ward Sornbutnark 6-love, 7-5, and 6-3, also in straight sets. Korea is in a dominating position with a single win needed to advance to the second round. Meanwhile, the KBL playoffs are finally here, with 6 teams vying for the championship trophy. The league marked the start of the postseason at the Media Day Friday. Now the LG Sakers and Goyang Orions kick off the first round 5-game series on Sunday. The SK Knights and ET Land Elephants get going on Monday. The defending champs Mobis Phoebus as well as the Dongbu Promi will take on the winners of the respective series in round 2. The 2 best teams will then meet in the KBL finals. Over to the LPGA in Singapore, Park In-bi finished atop the leaderboard after round 2 at the HSBC Women's Champions. After going even par to start, Park finally got her putting going, recording the first of 3 birdies in the round on the 14th hole. At an overall 9 under par, she's tied for the lead with Spaniard Carlota Ciganda. Park said she wants to create more birdie chances on the front 9, and if she does, chances are very good that she'll hoist the title on Sunday. Finally, to the NBA, OKC Thunder guard Russell Westbrook went on a historic run of 4 straight triple-doubles, but that came to an end against the Chicago Bulls. Westbrook scored 43 points in the Thunder's 105-108 loss to the Bulls, but fell short 2 rebounds and 3 assists of a 5th one. His run of 4 straight triple-doubles was the first since Michael Jordan went for 7 straight back in 1989. For his efforts, he's been thrust into MVP talks in the final quarter of the NBA season. And that's all I have for sports. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Hello. Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather outlook. Mild winter conditions lasted throughout the day with daytime highs peaking about 4 degrees higher compared to yesterday. And if you didn't know, today is Gyeongchip, one of the seasonal indicators that marks the day when animals awake from their winter sleep. Currently, it's mostly clear skies, but light showers are falling down in Jeju. Also, dry weather advisories have been extended to more regions, and humidity levels are down at 19% in parts of Gangwon province. Expect comfortable weather to continue this weekend, but do keep in mind the big gap in numbers between the day and night. Other than that, it looks like another round of cold snap awaits us next week. On to tomorrow's readings. The daytime high here in Seoul and Busan should reach 12, Daegu and Gwangju 14. Meanwhile, Daejeon peaks at 13, Dokdo 6, Mount Kumgang 0. Hope you have a lovely Friday evening. I'll see you soon.
And that's primetime news for this Friday. Thanks for watching. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you again soon.